Hello guys, welcome back to the shop, and with spring fast approaching, alright, I might be lying, it's December, but with spring coming up in the next couple of months at least, everyone's going to want to start getting some patio furniture to sit outside and enjoy the weather. But if you've seen prices of patio equipment, it is expensive. So I'm going to get a head start this spring and actually make some patio furniture. And this stuff won't be made out of pallet wood, although that would be pretty cool. What we got here are some junk 2x4's that I got. We're going to go ahead and mend these up and then turn them into some beautiful chairs. That way we can sit out there with a nice cold beer and enjoy the weather. So I'm going to be making 2 patio chairs. The design I'm doing is actually going to take quite a bit of wood. So I got 5 2x4's right here. I might end up having to do more. I have a lot of other scrap pieces of 2x4, so I'm not worried about being able to finish this project. I'll give you a total length of 2x4's that I use at the end of this project, so if you happen to go to the store to buy 2x4's, you'll know exactly what you need. So the first step of this project is going to be cutting out these legs and the armrest for this project. The legs I'm cutting out right here at 24 inches, and then the armrest I did it quite short at 20 inches. So now that we got all of our legs cut out, it's time to get our pocket hole jig. And I'm going to go ahead and put 2 pocket holes on the top of every single leg. Next, we're going to be taking our 2-foot pieces with the pocket hole screws and connecting them to our arms. Before we screw them on, I always like to throw a little glue down. So now that we got the armrest, and I just want to say, with those pocket hole screws and the glue, this makes one solid joint. But now that we got this done, we're going to go ahead and put some cross pieces on here. Instead of using 2x4's for this, I'm going to go ahead and use 2x6's. This is going to give it a much more solid look, and it'll be a lot easier than having 10 pieces of 2x4 go across here. Using these 2x6's, I'm just going to be able to put 3. And as you can probably tell, I also got these from a construction site, so this will be no added cost for me. I'm going to put 3 of these evenly across here, and it'll be at 17 inches. So let's start cutting these up, putting pocket holes in. So we got our stack of boards now. So now it's time to do more pocket hole screws. We're going to do 3 on each side. I got 12 of them here, so that's 12 of these all together. So that means 6 per board. 6 times 12 is, oh man, it's a lot. So I gotta make sure I got a fresh battery, so we're probably gonna go through a lot. Let's get started. Alright, so I finally got all the pocket holes in, and my plan was to actually sand the whole thing once I had it all together. But looking at these boards, they're pretty bad. They got a lot of dirt all over them. As you can see, they're in pretty rough condition. So I'm going to end up just sanding these ahead of time. I'm just going to put some 80 grit on, maybe even higher, just to really get all this dirt off of it and make them look nice and clean and fresh. So now that we got all of our boards sanded, I just did a 60 grit sanding on it. I'm going to have to do another sanding, but I'm going to wait until it's all together and then just sand the whole chair before I do my next one. So what we're doing now is we're actually going to put this together. I'm going to grab one of my armrests right here. And then I'm going to take my 3 pieces and then stick these in here. And then space them out accordingly. So now that I got my 3 pieces in here, I'm just going to space them out evenly. And I'm just going to use a chunk that I've taken off. This is about the right size I want for that. Right there, right there. And right there. brings me pretty much all the way to the bottom so that they're evenly spaced out. So now that I know I'm good to go, I'm going to pull these out real quick, add glue to all of these seams. That way we can make that nice super strong bond. And we're going to put them back and then drill in the pocket hole screws. Alright, and then when you're working with construction lumber like this, it does get a little warped, especially these 2x4's. So I just got the edges right here clamped down so that I know that when I screw these in, it's going to make it completely flat. And then we got them all spaced out correctly, and then we're just going to go ahead and pocket screw them all in. Here is going to be the outside of our chair. Now we just got to do this all over for the other side. In my case, 3 other sides. Alright, so now that we got all these crazy looking pieces all put together, I gotta show you something else. So I've been working on the inside now. This is where I want the top of my seat to be. So what I went ahead and did is I took a 2x4 and screwed it into the outside one here. This is going to secure where we sit. If you haven't guessed it, our seat is also going to be made out of 2x4s. Here's my example board for obvious reasons. Since we have this here, this is where our seat's going to be. That way it'll sit flush with our outside piece. Not only that, but I went ahead and did some pocket hole screws on the up. That way, when we put these on here, we'll be able to pocket hole screw up. I'm also going to glue this on this 90 degree. That way these boards are not going to be going anywhere. Actually, it's kind of cool having it at like a V like this. But I won't be doing that. I'm going to set it in like this. This piece is obviously too short. My fat butt ain't going to fit in that. I'm going to be doing 2 feet. That should be wide enough for me. And we're going to have 4 2x4s in a row right here. So I got more 2x4s. Let's cut them into 2-foot chunks. Test this thing out. It looks like we're pretty much done with the chair. Oh, maybe not. I forgot the backrest. Whew. Okay, now that I'm covered in sawdust, we're going to work on the backrest. It'll be pretty easy. I'm going to go ahead and measure this right at 20 inches. So my first plan was to take some 2x4s, and I was going to do one here and one below. But I'm not a big fan of that look. So I still got a piece of 2x6 left. And I think if I put this across here, that'll be enough, and that gives it a much better look. So all I'm going to be doing is cutting this to the proper length, just doing some pocket hole screws on the back end of it, so that way when this is up against something, no one will see it. And then also gluing it on there, pocket hole screws, and then it'll be nice and tight, and then ready for sanding. So, more pocket hole screws. Great. Now these things are looking pretty good. Now that they're all sanded, they're nice and comfy. But to be honest, this is a pretty boring color. I'm going to go ahead and throw these on my bench and then give these guys a cool color. I'm going to put a nice stain on them. And they'll be ready for outside use. So for this project, I ended up using a early American stain for this. It's a nice medium brown color. I thought that would go very good for our patio. Since I'm staining this all together, I didn't want to use a gel stain just because of how thick gel stains can kind of be. I knew that a regular stain would be a lot easier to apply on a big piece like this that's already put together. And as you can see, I'm actually using a sponge brush to apply it. This was my first time using a sponge brush to put on stain, and I do have to say that I am a fan. It's nice with the corners to get into cracks like this or nail holes that you might come across, especially with me using salvaged wood. Not only does it help you get into cracks and crevices like that, it does soak up and hold a lot of stain, so you don't have to dip it in quite as much as you do with a brush. And of course, after staining, you gotta put your poly on. For this project, I'm using a oil-based exterior poly. I'm using this because I know it's gonna be outside in the sun and rain. This is gonna do a lot better job of protecting the wood than a regular water-based poly would do. And again, I'm just using my sponge brush to help apply it. And yeah, again, I gotta say, big fan of the sponge brush now. Super nice to get in these cracks. And areas like this. So personally, what I like to do is I like to go ahead and put 2 layers of this poly on. So the reason I like to put 2 on right away, because the next step is going to be sanding. And if you only put 1 layer on, sometimes it can be a little thin, or maybe you can miss a spot, and you end up sanding some of your stain away. So the way I stop that from happening is I go ahead and put 2 layers of poly on it right away. Then normally I just grab some 220 sandpaper, and then I sand the whole thing so that it's nice and smooth. And then once you're done sanding, yep, you gotta put more poly on. But this is gonna be the 3rd and final layer that I'm putting on, and it should be nice and smooth and ready to go. So here we go, now that we're all done, we have our patio chairs complete. You can either leave them like this, or our plan is to find some pillows that we're going to put on the bottom here and on the back side to make it just a little bit more comfy for you. But as is, it looks very nice as well. This was a pretty fun and easy project, and hey, for me it didn't cost much. I just got all these out at the construction site, so it didn't cost me much. Next to pallets, I know 2x4's are the next easiest thing to find out on the junkyard. So you shouldn't have too much of an issue putting these together. But I know in the beginning of my video I said that I'd give you a total of 2x4's and 2x6's that I used. So let's go ahead and see what the damage is. Alright, so for 2x4's, I didn't have a piece of paper, so I had to write on cardboard. I ended up using 232 inches of 2x4. That ends up being 19.3 feet. So if you go out and buy 2 10-foot 2x4's, you'll be just fine. And for 2x6's, these are the pieces on the side and then also in the back here. I used 122 inches, which comes to 10.2 feet. So unfortunately for that, you're going to have to go ahead and buy a 12-foot piece if you can find that. But that's my video, guys. I hope you had fun watching. Again, I know wood is really expensive right now. But still, even if you go to the store and buy the lumber for this, it is still way cheaper than actually buying patio furniture. And you know it's going to hold up much longer than what you buy. So until next time, grab yourself a beer, and I'll see you then.